Snow falls like shattered glass, sharp and relentless in the beam of Grace's headlights. Her old car shudders against the mounting storm, windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the swirling white. The narrow forest road ahead has all but disappeared beneath growing drifts. "Come on," she whispers, leaning forward as if those few inches might reveal a path through the blizzard. Her headlights illuminate nothing but a wall of white. The twins sleep in their car seats behind her, blissfully unaware of their mother's mounting terror. Grace pulls to a stop, the tires crunching on what she hopes is still road. The cabin has to be close somewhere in these woods. Thomas had mentioned it so many times, his family's place in the northern pines, though he'd never taken her there. All she has is an address scribbled on the back of an envelope and the desperate hope it might offer shelter. "Maybe we should wait it out," she murmurs to herself, glancing back at her children. They're bundled in their thickest sleepers, small faces peaceful in sleep. The car still holds some warmth, and she has packed formula, diapers, and a change of clothes. As if in response to her thoughts, the engine sputters once, twice, then dies with apathetic wheeze. No. Grace turns the key frantically. The engine groans, tries to catch, then falls silent. She tries again. Nothing. The cold immediately begins seeping in, made visible by her breath clouding in front of her face. Panic claws at her throat. They're miles from the nearest town on a back road that might not see a single car for days in this weather. The twins will freeze long before morning without heat. Think, Grace, think. She closes her eyes, imagining what Thomas would do. Thomas with his quiet confidence, his uncanny ability to remain calm when everything went wrong. Thomas, who is gone now, leaving her with 2 babies and nowhere to go after the landlord changed the locks 3 days ago. A soft whimper comes from the back seat. Zoe stirs first, as she always does, her brother usually following within minutes. Grace takes a deep breath. She can't carry all the baby supplies, but she can bundle the twins against her body for warmth. The cabin has to be close somewhere in these woods. It's her only chance. "We'll make it," she tells the sleeping infants. "I promise." With shaking hands, she wrestles Zoe and Luca into their insulated snowsuits, secures them in their carriers, then buttons her oversized winter coat around them so they're nestled against her chest. The moment she steps out of the car, flashlight in hand, the wind nearly knocks her back. Snow pelts her face like tiny needles, instantly numbing her cheeks and nose. A sound reaches her ears, a long, mournful howl that raises the hair on the back of her neck. Just the wind, she tells herself, though the pitch is too perfect, too intentional, just the wind playing tricks. Grace trudges forward, one careful step at a time. The snow has already accumulated past her ankles. Each step a small battle. She remembers passing a roadside emergency phone maybe half a mile back. If she can reach it, call for help. 20 minutes later, her hope of finding the phone has vanished along with any sense of direction. The road has disappeared beneath her feet, and she finds herself following what looks like a game trail through increasingly dense trees. The twins have awakened, Luca's hungry cries joining Zoe's frightened whimpers. "Shh, my loves," she whispers, though her words are instantly devoured by the storm. "We're going to be okay." She's lying to them. The forest stretches endlessly in every direction, identical pines bowing under the weight of snow. Her legs burn with exhaustion, her fingers numb around the flashlight. Grace's legs give out. She sinks to her knees in the snow, curling protectively around the twins. They're crying harder now, sensing their mother's fear. The cold is seeping through her layers, and she knows with terrible certainty that they won't survive the night out here. "I'm sorry," she whispers, tears freezing on her cheeks. "I'm so sorry." Something moves in the darkness beyond her flashlight's beam. Grace freezes, primal instinct raising the hairs on her arms. The beam of light wavers, then catches a pair of eyes that glow like molten amber in the darkness. A wolf emerges from the swirling snow, massive and silver gray. Grace doesn't move, doesn't breathe. The wolf is enormous, larger than any wolf she's seen in photos. Old scars mark its muzzle. "I'm just passing through," she finds herself saying, voice cracking. The wolf stops directly before her, lowering its head to sniff at the bundles against her chest. Its eyes meet hers again, a gaze too knowing, too deliberate for a wild animal. Then it turns, takes several steps away, and looks back at her expectantly. Grace blinks, disbelieving. The wolf takes a few more steps, then pauses again, turning its head to stare at her. "You want me to follow you?" The words sound absurd spoken aloud, but the wolf's intent seems unmistakable. With no better option, Grace struggles to her feet and follows. The wolf moves deliberately, slowing when she falls behind, occasionally turning to ensure she's still there. It leads her deeper into the forest, where the trees grow so dense they provide some shelter from the howling wind. Sometimes the wolf disappears briefly into the whiteout, and Grace's heart seizes with panic, but then it materializes again, waiting with that same eerie patience. Just when her strength is failing, when each step feels like it might be her last, Grace sees it. A small cabin emerging from the storm like a mirage. The wolf stands beside the porch watching her with those impossible amber eyes. Chapter 1. The cabin door cracks open under Grace's trembling hand. She steps inside, the twins still bundled against her chest, her eyes scanning the darkness as she fumbles for a light switch. There is none. Of course, she whispers, her voice too loud in desolate space. The beam of her flashlight reveals a single room with rough wooden walls. A stone fireplace dominates one wall, but the wood box beside it is empty. Just a few splinters and dust. A small table, 2 chairs, a narrow cot with a threadbare blanket, a hunter's shelter, nothing more. Certainly not prepared for infants. Grace lays the twins down on the blanket she spreads on the small cot, her heart sinking as she inspects the barren wood box. The temperature inside the cabin is only marginally better than outside, their breath still visible in the beam of her flashlight. No wood, she says to herself. Without fire, they might as well be in the snow. She searches the cabin frantically, opening the single cabinet, finding only a dented pot, a chipped mug, and a rusted can opener. No food, no water, no wood. We need fire, Grace murmurs, more to herself than to the wolf. She steps outside briefly, gathering fallen branches from near the cabin's edge. The cold is brutal, stealing her breath. By the time she returns with an armful of wood, her fingers are numb, her face burning with cold. The twins begin to fuss as she kneels before the fireplace, arranging the dampest branches she could find. It takes 4 matches before a spark catches, and even then the wet wood hisses and smokes more than burns. Please, she whispers, blowing gently on the struggling flame. Please catch. Finally, a small flame takes hold, catching on a drier section of bark. Grace feeds it carefully, adding thesmolus twigs first, coaxing the reluctant fire to life. Relief floods through her as warmth begins to seep into the cabin. A soft scratching at the door makes her turn. The wolf stands in the doorway, snow coating its thick fur. It pads silently inside, shaking snow from its coat. Grace instinctively steps between it and the twins, but the creature merely circles the perimeter of the cabin once, then settles in the farthest corner, watching. Its size is even more apparent in the confined space of the cabin. What had seemed large outside now feels enormous, shoulders nearly reaching the height of the table, paws the size of dinner plates. Grace feels a flutter of unease having such a powerful predator so close to her babies. But the wolf makes no threatening moves. The twins are crying in earnest now, their little faces red with hunger and discomfort. Grace tears one of her own shirts into makeshift diapers, using her remaining clean one to wipe the twins clean. Shh, it's okay. She soothes, speaking to them as she works. Mommy's here. We're safe now. It's not much, but it's shelter. The wolf's ears twitch at the sound of her voice, but it remains in its corner, a silent presence. Grace scoops snow from the windowsill into the pot she found, placing it near the fire to melt. At least they'll have water to clean with, though it's not enough for much else. As the twins' cries grow more insistent, Grace turns her back to the wolf, settling before the fire with them. She feels exposed, vulnerable with the creature behind her, but she has no choice. The twins must be fed. I know you're hungry, she murmurs to them. The babies quiet as they feed, and Grace feels some tension leave her shoulders. For a moment, despite everything, it's just a mother and her children in the warm glow of firelight. Your daddy said it was peaceful here, she tells Luca and Zoe as they lie on the blanket near the fire. I guess it is in a way. No landlords, no bills, just us and the snow. And her voice trails off as she glances at the wolf. Its amber eyes reflect the firelight, watching her with unnerving intensity. And our strange companion, she finishes softly. Grace wraps her arms around herself, fighting a shiver that has nothing to do with cold. I wish your father could have known about you, she tells the twins, stroking their soft heads. The wolf shifts in its corner, a soft sound escaping it, something between a sigh and a whine. He would have been a good father, Grace continues. He was kind, gentle, a bit mysterious sometimes, especially about his family. The last branch goes onto the fire. The flame dwindles, darkness creeping back into the corners of the cabin. Grace eyes the door, dreading the thought of venturing back into the storm, but knowing the fire can't die. Grace's eyelids grow heavy as exhaustion claims her. The last thing she sees before sleep takes her is the wolf, silhouetted against the firelight, standing guard at the door like a sentinel from some ancient myth. Chapter 2. Morning comes as a gentle brightening rather than a true sunrise. The storm has softened overnight, snow still falling but without the wind's savage fury. Grace wakes to find the fire burning low but steady. The wolf is gone. The absence hits her with surprising force. She scans the small cabin, irrationally worried, then laughs at herself. "What did you expect?" she murmurs, stoking the fire. "It's a wild animal. It found better things to do than babysit us." She feeds the twins by firelight, watching flakes drift past the window. The silence feels almost sacred after the storm's constant howling. "We made it through the night," she tells Zoe and Luca, their small faces turned up to hers. That's something, isn't it? As morning stretches toward midday, Grace inventories their situation. No diapers except what she can fashion from her own clothes. No food, shelter that's barely adequate. The car might as well be on another continent. She's arranging the twins on their blanket when the cabin door nudges open. Grace spins around startled, then freezes in disbelief. The wolf has returned. Something dark hangs from its jaws. It steps inside, shaking snow from its coat, then deposits a rabbit on the floor and backs away several paces. Grace stares, unable to process what she's seeing. Wild predators don't bring food to humans. They don't return to cabins. They certainly don't stand there looking at her with what almost seems like expectation. "You came back," she says, her voice barely audible. "Why did you come back?" The wolf blinks slowly, amber eyes unreadable. Grace looks at the rabbit, then back at the wolf. "Is that for me?" The silence stretches between them. The wolf makes a soft sound in its throat, then nudges the rabbit an inch closer to her with its nose. "This is insane," Grace whispers. "You're a wolf. You should be miles away by now." But the evidence lies before her. A wild predator sharing its kill. Something a pack member might do, not something offered to an entirely different species. Hunger wins over confusion. "Thank you," she says, the words feeling inadequate and absurd simultaneously. The wolf settles in its corner as Grace awkwardly prepares the rabbit using the hunting knife she found in the cabin. She's never skinned an animal before, but necessity proves an effective teacher. The meat roasts over the fire, filling the cabin with a rich aroma that makes her mouth water. "Maybe you're just using us for shelter," she says to the wolf as she eats. "Smart, really. Storm outside, warmth in here." But that doesn't explain the rabbit. The second day passes in a haze of small tasks. Grace gathers more wood, finding sheltered deadfall beneath the trees. She melts snow for washing, fashions more diapers from her dwindling supply of clothing. The wolf disappears mid-morning. Grace tells herself she shouldn't expect it to return, that yesterday was some bizarre anomaly. Yet she finds herself glancing repeatedly at the door. When it pushes open shortly before dusk, she can't suppress a smile. This time the wolf carries a grouse. It places the bird carefully on the floor, then retreats to what has become its corner. "You know this isn't normal, right?" Grace says, gesturing between them. "Wolves don't do this." The wolf merely watches her, its gaze unnerving in its intelligence. By afternoon, the snow has stopped. The world outside the window is transformed. Pristine white stretching in all directions, sunlight creating diamond sparkles across the drifts. The sight is breathtaking, but Grace knows beauty can be deadly. The drifts would swallow her to the waist if she tried to walk through them. "We're not going anywhere soon," she tells the twins as she changes them, "but we're safe here for now." That evening, as twilight settles over the white landscape, the wolf lingers near the fire where the twins lie on their blanket. Its posture is different, less guarded, head tilted in apparent curiosity. Grace watches it from the corner of her eye as she prepares her meager dinner. The wolf inches closer to the babies, its movements almost hesitant. "They're just babies," Grace says softly. "They won't hurt you." The wolf's ears flick at the sound of her voice, but its attention remains fixed on the twins. Luca waves his arms, making small gurgling sounds. Zoe watches the wolf with wide, solemn eyes. Grace sets her food aside, tension rippling through her. Every maternal instinct screams to snatch her children away from the predator. Yet something deeper, something she can't name, keeps her still. The wolf pauses, sensing her unease. Their eyes meet across the small space, and Grace sees something there that defies explanation. A question, a request. "I must be losing my mind," she whispers, but slowly moves to sit beside her children. A silent permission granted. The wolf approaches with deliberate slowness. It lowers its massive head, nostrils flaring as it scents first Luca, then Zoe. Its breath stirs the fine wisps of hair on their heads. Grace holds perfectly still, her heart pounding. Zoe reaches up, her tiny fingers brushing the wolf's muzzle. The creature goes still, allowing the touch for just a moment before drawing back. Its amber eyes meet Grace's, something passing between them. An understanding that transcends logic, transcends the natural order of things. Later, as moonlight spills through the cabin window, Grace studies her dwindling supplies. "We need to find your father's cabin," she tells the sleeping twins. "It has to be better equipped than this." The wolf lying by the door lifts its head at her words. Its gaze is steady, unreadable. But in the moonlight, in the quiet of this small shelter that has become their temporary haven, Grace feels something shift inside her. This shelter has kept them alive, but it isn't their destination. Somewhere deeper in these woods lies Thomas's cabin, their true refuge. Chapter 3. Dawn breaks crisp and clear, sunlight refracting through ice crystals suspended in the air. Grace wakes instantly, alert, sensing the change. The storm has paused, not finished, but resting, a window of opportunity she may not get again. She studies the twins, still sleeping. Their makeshift diapers are soaked through. Her own stomach growls with emptiness. The shelter has kept them alive, but they can't stay. "Today," she whispers, decision crystallizing. "We find the cabin or we don't survive another night." The wolf is gone. Out hunting, she assumes. Grace gathers what little they have. The knife, the pot, the threadbare blanket. She fashions a more secure carrier for the twins from her coat, testing how to distribute their weight to allow her to trudge through deep snow. Gray steps outside, blinking in the brightness. The world has transformed into something alien and beautiful. Snow blankets everything, pristine white, broken only by the deep blue shadows of trees. The cold is different without wind, a still, patient predator rather than a howling beast. The car must be her first destination. She needs diapers, formula, proper clothes for the twins. Then she'll search for the cabin Thomas described. Grace orientates herself, trying to remember the direction they came from. All landmarks are buried. The forest transformed. She looks for disturbed snow where they might have walked. But the storm has erased all tracks. "Trust yourself," she murmurs, securing the twins against her chest. Luca fusses briefly, Zoe blinking up at the bright sky. "We can do this." She chooses a direction and begins walking. The snow reaches mid-thigh in places, each step a battle. Sweat forms under her layers despite the cold, her breath coming in white clouds. An hour passes. No sign of the car. Grace pauses beneath a towering pine, adjusting the twins. Doubt creeps in. Has she been walking in circles? The featureless white landscape offers no clues. "We'll find it," she tells the twins. Though her voice lacks conviction, she pushes on, the physical exertion warming her even as exhaustion builds. The twins grow heavier with each step. When Zoe begins to cry, the sound crystalline in the winter silence. Grace stops to feed them, huddling against a fallen log for minimal shelter. "I know, baby," she soothes. "I know you're uncomfortable. We'll find better soon." As Zoe nurses, Grace scans the horizon. The sun has climbed higher, shadows shortening. Morning is slipping away. If the storm returns before they find shelter, a movement catches her eye. Gray against white. The wolf appears at the crest of a small rise, watching her. Relief floods through Grace, surprising in its intensity. "You found us," she calls. The wolf stands motionless, then turns away, moving a few paces before looking back expectantly. "Not this time," Grace says, shaking her head. "I need to find the car first." The wolf comes closer, circling around her, then moves deliberately in a direction different from the one she'd been heading. It stops, waiting. Grace hesitates. Following a wolf through a blizzard had seemed like madness, yet it saved their lives. Now in daylight, it seems even more absurd. "Do you understand what I'm looking for?" she asks, feeling foolish, a car, metal, on a road. The wolf simply waits, amber eyes fixed on her. Grace makes her decision. "Lead on, then." She follows the wolf through a stand of trees into a clearing she doesn't recognize, then down a gentle slope. The walking is easier here, the snow not quite as deep. The landscape shifts subtly. More deciduous trees mixed with the pines. A fallen birch creates a natural bridge over a frozen creek. The wolf crosses easily, then waits as Grace navigates it carefully, balancing with precious cargo. "I am trusting you," she tells the wolf. "I hope you know that." 20 minutes later, Grace stops disbelieving. Through a break in the trees, she sees it. The dark shape of her station wagon nearly buried in snow, but unmistakable. "You found it," she whispers. "How did you find it?" The wolf watches as she struggles toward the car, digging through snow to reach the door. It takes all her strength to wrench it open against the drifted snow. Inside, everything is frozen solid but intact. Grace retrieves the diaper bag, formula extra clothes for the twins. She finds her emergency kit with its basic first aid supplies and protein bars. Everything she couldn't carry during the storm. "We did it," she tells the babies as she changes them, relief making her hands shake. Step 1 complete. The wolf paces nearby, occasionally looking back the way they came, then toward the deeper forest. "I know," Grace says, following its gaze. "We need to find the cabin before the weather turns." She shoulders her supplies, adjusts the twins securely against her, and nods to the wolf. "Show me." The creature leads her away from the car, away from the road, deeper into the forest. The terrain grows more challenging. Small hills, fallen trees, areas where the snow has drifted higher than her waist. Grace follows animal trails where she can, sometimes using broken branches to test snow depth before stepping. The twins grow restless as noon passes. Grace stops to feed and change them. Her own hunger gnawing at her, she forces down a protein bar, knowing she needs strength for what lies ahead. The wolf waits with surprising patience, sometimes disappearing briefly only to return minutes later, as if scouting their path. The quality of light changes, taking on the golden hue of approaching sunset. Grace's legs burn with fatigue, her shoulders aching from carrying the twins. Twice she stumbles, barely catching herself. "I can't go much further," she admits as they stop by a frozen pond. The temperature is dropping as daylight wanes. Panic rises in her throat. "We need to find it soon." The wolf moves ahead, more purposeful now. It leads her up a steep incline, and the climb nearly impossible with her burden. At one point, Grace slips to her knees, tears of frustration and exhaustion threatening. "I can't," she gasps. The wolf returns to her side, circling close. For one bizarre moment, Grace imagines leaning against its substantial form for support. Instead, she finds strength somewhere deep inside, that same core of determination that got her through labor alone, through Thomas's funeral, through every impossible day since. She pushes to her feet and continues climbing. At the crest of the hill, the wolf stops, standing tall, its gaze fixed ahead. Grace reaches its side, breathing hard, then freezes. Below them, nestled in a natural clearing surrounded by protective pines, sits a cabin. Not the crude shelter they left behind, but a proper cabin with a wide porch, smoke curling from its chimney against the darkening sky. "Thomas's cabin," she whispers. "It's real." The structure gleams golden in the last rays of sunlight, windows reflecting the flame colors of sunset. Even from this distance, Grace can see it's well-maintained, solid, a real home, not just a shelter. She looks at the wolf beside her, its proud posture, the dignified tilt of its massive head. For a moment, the creature seems to embody the wilderness itself. Untamable, dangerous, yet somehow offering her passage. Offering protection. "Thank you," Grace says simply. The wolf meets her gaze, amber eyes reflecting the sunset. Then it moves forward, leading her down toward their destination, toward safety. Chapter 4. The cabin door swings open under Grace's hand, warm air greeting her as she steps inside with the twins. She pauses. "Oh, ruck, this is no crude shelter." A great room opens before her, anchored by a massive stone fireplace where flames dance. Comfortable furniture, thick rugs, built-in bookshelves. It feels like a true home. Most surprising of all, the fire is already lit. "Hello," Grace calls. "Is anyone here?" No answer. The wolf slips in behind her, shaking snow from its coat, eyes scanning the room with practiced ease. She sets down their supplies and explores. A modern kitchen opens off the main room. 2 clean, maintained bedrooms branch from the hall. A coffee mug sits by the sink. Fresh kindling waits near the hearth. "Someone's been staying here," she murmurs to the wolf, now resting near the door. She finds the bathroom and nearly cries at the sight of running water. She bathes the twins, their tiny faces brightening as the grime washes away. Fed and clean, they fall asleep on the king-sized bed. Grace watches them, letting herself believe they might finally be safe. Back in the main room, new details catch her eye. Photos on the wall. Her heart clenches. Thomas, younger and smiling, stands beside a lake in one. In another, he's on the porch of this very cabin. No family photos, no clues to the relatives he never spoke of. Why didn't you ever bring me here? She whispers to the image. It's beautiful. The wolf lies on the hearthrug, watchful but calm. Grace finds staples in the kitchen, cans, rice, pasta, and cooks a simple meal. It feels luxurious. As twilight deepens, she eats on the couch. Exhaustion creeping in. The wolf's eyes gleam in the firelight, unsettling in their intelligence. Eventually, it pads to the door and scratches. Grace lets it out. The cabin feels strangely empty without it. She's midway through the kitchen cabinets when she hears a key turn in the lock. Heart pounding, she grabs a cast iron skillet and presses against the wall. The door swings open. A man enters, stamping snow off his boots, back turned as he shrugs off his coat. Grace raises the skillet. He turns and spots her. What the? He stops, eyes widening. Who the hell are you? I should be asking you that. Grace snaps. This is private property, sir. The man blinks. Yeah, he shoots back. My private property. Now who are you and why are you threatening me with my own cookware? This cabin belongs to Thomas Wilson, Grace says, standing her ground. My husband. The man's expression shifts to confusion. Thomas is married, he asks. He was, Grace corrects. He died 4 months ago. Shock hits the man's features. Thomas is dead, he asks, voice strained. Grace nods slowly. Hiking accident last October, she explains. The stranger runs a hand through his hair. We hadn't spoken in years. He murmurs, seeming lost, so you admit you knew him? Grace observes. I am Cooper Blackwood, the man says, extending his hand. Thomas's cousin. A baby's cry cuts through the air. You have a baby here? Cooper asks, meeting her eyes. Twins? Grace replies, finally lowering the skillet. Thomas's children? His expression softens. Tom had children? He never. The door swings open as the wolf enters, shakings now from its coat. His fingers curl at his sides, tendons standing out on his neck. He doesn't move, doesn't even seem to breathe, just stares at the wolf with an intensity that makes the hair rise on Grace's arms. Silence stretches. Don't worry, Grace says. It's not dangerous, at least not to us. Cooper's jaw clenches. I wouldn't be so sure about that, lady. No, I swear, Grace insists. It's been protecting us. It led us here. Cooper's head snaps toward her. It led you to this cabin. His gaze flicks between her and the wolf. Grace nods. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. Luca's cries grow more insistent in Grace's eyes. I need to check on my son, she says. She leaves Cooper and the wolf in their silent standoff, returning to the master bedroom where Luca has worked himself into a full cry. Zoe remains asleep beside him, somehow undisturbed by her brother's noise. When his cries subside to hiccuping whimpers and she manages to return to the main room, she stops in the doorway, stunned. Cooper stands near the fireplace, speaking in low, urgent tones to the wolf. Not as someone might speak to a pet or even a wild animal, but as one would address an equal. A person. Alpha, I just don't think he breaks off as he sees her. The wolf turns too, eyes meeting Grace's with a nerving calm. Sorry. Cooper straightens. Old habit talking to animals. Grace frowns, but then his gaze drops to Luca, his voice softening immediately. May I? He asks. She turns so he can see the baby's face. He has Thomas's eyes. Cooper observes exactly the same. Yes. Grace's throat tightens. Both twins do. Cooper glances at the wolf again before speaking next. I'm sorry about earlier, he says. Finding you here was unexpected, but any family of Thomas's is welcome. He scans the cabin. Do you have what you need? We're managing, Grace replies cautiously. I brought what I could from the car. I'll come back tomorrow with supplies. Anything you need. Grace blinks in surprise. That's very kind of you, she says with a nod. It's what Thomas would have wanted. Cooper moves to the door. The generator's full. Water's from a well with an electric pump. Plenty of firewood outside. You'll be warm tonight. At the threshold, he glances back at the wolf. His posture shifts. A subtle straightening, a respectful tilt of his head before he slips out into the night. Chapter 5. January settles over the cabin like a soft blanket. The rhythm of days simplifies to basic needs. Warmth, food, rest. The twins thrive in the quiet routine. Their faces fill out. Their cries grow stronger. Zoe smiles first. A toothless beam that makes Grace's heart catch. Luca follows a day later, his eyes so like Thomas's, crinkling at the corners. The wolf remains a constant presence. Each morning it patrols the perimeter of the clearing, sometimes disappearing into the forest for hours, but always returning before dusk. Grace catches herself talking to it more often, narrating her days as if to a companion. "We're going to try mashed potatoes today," she tells it one morning as she feeds the twins. The books say 4 months is early, but they seem ready. The wolf watches from its place by the hearth, amber eyes tracking her movements. Cooper comes by every few days, his truck loaded with supplies, diapers, formula, fresh vegetables, sometimes small gifts for the twins. "My mother made these," he explains awkwardly, presenting tiny knitted booties. She wanted to contribute. His visits grow longer, conversations stretching beyond necessities into genuine interaction. The wolf watches these interactions with apparent interest, sometimes positioning itself between them when Cooper stays too long. "Your guardian is protective," Cooper comments one evening as the wolf herds Shim away from where Zoe and Luca lie on a blanket before the fire. "Only with certain people," Grace observes. "It's fine with me handling them." Something flickers across Cooper's face. Knowledge he isn't sharing. Natural instinct, I guess. One morning, Grace notices a scratch on Luca's cheek, an angry red line where he must have caught himself with a tiny fingernail. She cleans it carefully, heartbroken by his pained whimpers. "First battle wound," she tells him, kissing his forehead. "We'll put some ointment on it." The wolf approaches, nosing close to examine the baby. Grace has grown accustomed to its interest in the twins, the way it sometimes leans in to scent them. "He'll be fine," she assures it, still finding it natural to speak to the creature as if it understands. "Babies heal quickly." The wolf sniffs Luca's cheek, then licks its own paw and settles by the fire, eyes never leaving the infant. That evening, Cooper brings a first aid kit. "Thought you might need this for the little ones." "Perfect timing," Grace says. "Luca scratched his face this morning." She lifts Luca from his makeshift playpen, then stops, confused. The scratch is gone, not scabbed over or healing, but completely vanished. The skin smooth and unblemished. "That's strange," she murmurs, turning Luca's face to the light. "I could have sworn." Cooper's eyes dart to the wolf, which has risen from its place by the fire and moved closer, watching them. "Kids, hell fast," he says, his casual tone forced. "Not this fast," Grace insists. "It was a deep scratch." Cooper straightens, his expression carefully neutral. "Maybe it wasn't as bad as you thought." The conversation shifts, but Grace notices Cooper watching the twins more closely for the remainder of his visit, his expression thoughtful. February brings thawing at midday. Deep freezes at night. Grace develops a new routine. Morning walks with the twins bundled against her in a carrier Cooper brought, the wolf always ranging ahead. It's during these walks that Grace first notices the wolf's changing behavior with the twins. When Zoe cries from cold or hunger, the wolf circles back, nosing at Grace's legs as if urging her to tend to the baby. When Luca grows fussy, the great beast sometimes positions itself between them, as if protecting the infant from his mother's handling. "I am not going to hurt him," Grace says, exasperated as the wolf blocks her path to Luca during a particularly intense crying jag. He needs to be changed. The wolf holds its ground, amber eyes assessing her until Luca's cries shift in pitch. "It's almost paternal," she tells Cooper during his next visit, like it's decided it's their guardian or something. Cooper chokes slightly on his coffee. "Paternal. I know how it sounds," Grace admits, "but this isn't normal wolf behavior." "No," Cooper agrees, his eyes finding the wolf where it lies near the twins' play area. "It's definitely not." That night, Grace wakes to the sound of voices. She sits up on the couch, disoriented, then realizes one voice belongs to Cooper. He's returned after midnight. Why? She moves quietly to the window and peers out. Cooper stands in the moonlight clearing, the wolf before him. They face each other like adversaries or equals engaged in intense debate. "You can't be serious," Cooper is saying, his voice carrying clearly in the still night air. "She's their mother. You must tell her before." The wolf makes no sound Grace can hear, but Cooper reacts as if to an interruption, throwing up his hands. Taking them from her is worse. "And what am I supposed to tell her? Or are you even planning to explain?" He breaks off, running a hand through his hair in frustration. The wolf sits back on its hunches, amber eyes reflecting moonlight. "Fine, have it your way, Alpha. But I won't be part of this deception much longer. Grace deserves to know what her children are." The wolf rises suddenly, a growl rumbling from deep in its chest. Cooper takes a step back, his posture instantly differential. Right, he snaps. You decide? Just like you decided for Thomas, history repeating itself. Is that what you want? Without waiting for a response, if such a thing were even possible, from a wolf, Cooper strides away into the darkness. Grace backs away from the window, mindreeling. Cooper speaking to the wolf as if carrying on a complex conversation, referring to it as Alpha, talking about their children as if they were something other than ordinary babies. And most disturbing, suggesting the wolf wanted to take her children from her. Chapter 6. The days after Cooper's midnight conversation with the wolf feel dreamlike. Grace starts watching both of them more closely, sensing something unspoken between them. Cooper's usual charm gives way to a restless energy. He brings toys for the twins but barely looks at them, his focus always on the wolf as if waiting for something. The wolf stays vigilant, but Grace notices a new intensity in how it watches her, measuring as though she's being tested. One evening in late March, Grace washes dishes at the sink while the twins nap. The wolf has been restless all day, disappearing into the woods for longer stretches. When it slips out again at dusk, Grace feels a strange relief, as if a pressure is lifted. She's drying the last plate when a soft knock sounds. Cooper stands on the porch, face grim. Is it gone? He asks. The wolf? Yes, it left about 20 minutes ago. Grace steps back to let him in. I wasn't expecting you today. Cooper enters, scanning the cabin like he needs proof. I don't have much time. Neither do you. Where are the twins? Sleeping. What's going on? Pack whatever you can carry, he says, pulling out her backpack. Essentials only. I've got a friend across the valley. You'll be safe there until we figure things out. Grace stares. What are you talking about? No time to explain. He grabs formula, diapers, clothes. Just trust me. You need to leave now before it comes back. Before what? The wolf. She grabs his arm. Cooper, you're scaring me. What's happening? He turns, voice low and urgent. It's going to take your children. The words hit like ice. That's ridiculous, she says, her voice trembling. It's a wolf. How could it possibly? It's not just a wolf. You must have realized that. The way it watches them. The way it led you here. Grace flashes back to that night. Cooper speaking to the wolf like a person. You need help, Cooper. Professional help. I know how it sounds, he says. But think the twins healing too fast. The wolf understanding commands communicating with me. It doesn't communicate with you. Grace snaps, you talk to it. That doesn't mean it understands. Then how did it lead you here? To this cabin. Thomas's cabin. She has no answer. Your children aren't ordinary either. Okay, there, stop it. She backs away, terrified now. You're insane. Get out. Grace, please. I'm trying to help you. That wolf is a growl cuts him off. The wolf stands in the doorway, massive and silver in the fading light, eyes locked on Cooper with clear menace. Tell her, Cooper says to the wolf, holding his ground. She deserves to know the truth. The wolf steps inside, growl deepening. Stop this, Grace says, voice shaking. Both of you, Cooper, leave now. That wolf is not a wolf, Cooper says, eyes fixed on the creature. And he's not a stranger. He's Thomas's father. Grace stares, stunned. The wolf lunges with a snarl, slamming Cooper backward. Cooper, she yells. He studies himself, hands raised. You can't keep this from her forever, EMTT. She'll find out. EMTT, get out, she tells Cooper, shaking. Please, just go. He looks at her, genuine fear in his voice. Be careful, Grace. Don't let him take your children. The wolf snarls again, backing him toward the door. Cooper goes, never taking his eyes off it. Think about what I said, he calls as the door closes. Grace stands frozen. The wolf turns to her, calm once more, watching with intelligent eyes, head tilted slightly. What was that about? She whispers. It says nothing, then lies across the hallway entrance, the one leading to the twins' room. A chill runs down her spine. It's going to take your children. Absurd, she thinks. But this wolf has already defied logic. She moves around it. It doesn't stop her. The twins sleep peacefully, untouched by the chaos. As she watches them, a decision forms. Cooper may be unhinged, but something is off. The cabin no longer feels safe. Tomorrow she'll leave, not to Cooper's friend, but back to civilization. She waits until the wolf settles by the hearth. Then she packs quietly, essentials only. Clothes, diapers, formula. The emergency cash Cooper helped her earn. The wolf watches with apparent disinterest, but she feels its gaze like a weight. Just tidying up, she says casually, stashing the bag by the door. Spring cleaning. Eventually, she lies on the couch, pretending to sleep. The wolf watches until her eyes close. She must actually drift off because she wakes to unfamiliar sounds. Floorboards creak, a rustle. A low voice speaking words she can't make out. She's in the bedroom now. Must have moved there in the night. The wolf is gone. The voice continues. Male, calm, gentle, unfamiliar but strangely resonant. Heart-pounding Grace rises. She grabs the baseball bat Cooper once gave her and creeps toward the door. In the main room, lit only by dying embers, sits a man she's never seen. Older, silver-haired, dignified, and in his arms, cradled with unexpected tenderness, are Zoe and Luca. Chapter 7. The man looks up, and Grace feels the world tilt beneath her feet. His eyes catching the firelight glow a familiar amber. "Grace," he says simply, his voice carrying the weight of recognition of knowing her without introduction. "We need to talk." Grace stares at him, the bat still raised but her grip loosening as she takes in his features. The strong jaw, the set of his eyes, the particular way his brow furrows, all achingly familiar like looking at Thomas, but weathered by 3 additional decades of life. "You're Thomas's father," she whispers knowingly. Her eyes dart around the room, searching for the silver-gray form that has been her constant companion these past months. It is nowhere to be seen. The man inclines his head. "EMTT Blackwood," he confirms, his attention already returning to the twins cradled in his arms. His large hands support them with surprising gentleness, his thumb brushing over Luca's cheek with a tenderness that seems at odds with his imposing presence. "Put my children down," Grace says, taking a step closer. "They don't know you." EMTT looks up, something almost like amusement crossing his features. "They know me well," he says, then pauses, noticing her continued searching of the room. "Looking for something?" Grace shakes her head, taking another step closer. She wants to demand he return her children, to snatch them from his arms, but there's something in the way he holds them, in the reverent gaze he turns upon them, that stops her. Instead, she finds herself saying, "I'm sorry for your loss." EMTT's head jerks up. "What about your son?" Grace clarifies softly. "I'm sorry." Something flickers across EMTT's face. A flash of raw pain so profound it takes Grace's breath away. It vanishes almost instantly behind a mask of stoicism. But she's seen it now. The wound that never healed. "You should feel more sorry for yourself," he says finally, his voice rough. Grace sits on the edge of the coffee table just a few feet from him now. "His death tore me apart," she admits. "But he was your son. I cannot imagine losing either of my children." The pain must be unbearable. EMTT's expression doesn't change, but Grace notices how his arms tighten almost imperceptibly around the twins. "What's done is done," he says flatly. "Thomas missed you," Grace says gently. EMTT's head snaps up. "He did," she insists. "I know you had a fight. He wouldn't say much about it, but he missed you. I could tell because whenever I asked about you, he had this forlorn look on his face. Enough." EMTT interrupts. Grace bites her lip, sensing she's treading dangerous ground. "Why are you here?" she asks instead. "How did you find us?" "You ask me how when I was the one to lead you here," Emmett replies. Grace stares at him, uncomprehending. "What are you talking about? You don't see that wolf anywhere, do you?" EMTT asks, his eyes holding hers. "You keep looking for it." The implication hovers between them, impossible, yet somehow making a terrible kind of sense. "I am the wolf child," EMTT says quietly. Grace shakes her head. "No, that's not possible. I'm what you would call a shifter." EMTT continues, his voice matter of fact. "And Thomas, my heir, was one too." The world seems to shrink around Grace, narrowing to this impossible conversation. "He would have told me," she protests weakly. "Telling you could have gotten him killed," EMTT says, his voice hardening. "And you as well, by who?" Grace asks, though part of her already knows the answer. EMTT meets her gaze directly. "By me." Grace shakes her head slowly. "You wouldn't do that," she says. She doesn't know this man, but she knows the wolf, knows how it protected them, guided them, watched over them with unwavering vigilance. The wolf protected their family. "You doubt me? I am the alpha of our pack," EMTT declares, drawing himself up despite the sleeping infants in his arms. "My word is law. No one should ever tell humans about our existence, or they'd be putting our entire species at risk. A crime punishable by death." "And yet you're telling me," Grace observes softly. EMTT frowns, clearly disliking being confronted with this contradiction. Me telling you is but a consequence of my son's poor choices. He says stiffly, poor choices. Grace echoes. EMTT says simply, you are kind and resilient and in another life a perfect choice of a mate for Thomas. But you are human. I couldn't allow it. The realization washes over Grace like ice water. This was why Thomas had cut ties with his family. It wasn't some vague disagreement or youthful rebellion. It was her. She was the reason why. She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Because it would have been a risk to your entire species' existence, as you said. No, child, Emma teased. It would have been a risk to yours, and it still is. I don't understand, Grace admits. During their conversation, she has drawn ever closer, now kneeling by the fire next to EMTT and the twins. The firelight catches the silver in his hair, illuminates the deep lines around his eyes. A shifter's bite, he explains, sets off the transformation into one of our own. You mean getting bitten would turn a human into a shifter? Grace asks, trying to absorb this impossible information. Yes, except no human has survived the bite in centuries. He looks at her directly. In other words, Grace, a bite from one of us kills humans. But Thomas would never. Thomas wouldn't. EMTT sigh, his gaze dropping to the twins. But a child? Grace follows his gaze to her sleeping babies. Understanding dawning with terrible clarity. Are you saying my children are your children or Thomas's? They are my heirs, Emmett says with quiet pride. And when they are of age, they will call upon their wolves and shift as their father once did. Grace shakes her head. That's impossible, she whispers. But there's no conviction in her denial. EMTT studies her for a moment, then gently shifts Zoe in his arm. With his free hand, he traces a single fingernail along the baby's forearm. Not enough to truly hurt her, but enough to break Theskin. Zoe's eyes fly open, her cry piercing the quiet room. Before Grace can react, EMTT makes a soft shushing sound. Not the frantic hushing of a guilty adult, but something deeper, more resonant. Zoe's cries stop instantly, her eyes fixed on EMTT with uncanny focus. Look, he says, nodding toward the small scratch. As Grace watches, the tiny wound closes before her eyes, the skin knitting together until no trace remains. That can't be. She reaches out with trembling fingers to touch the spot where the scratch had been. Shifter children heal quickly, Emmett explains. It's one of the first signs. Grace thinks back to Luca's mysteriously vanished scratch, to all the little oddities she'd dismissed or rationalized away. We can be careful, she says, desperation creeping into her voice. I'll explain to them once they're old enough. And before that, EMTT interrupts gently. When they grow teeth in a couple of months, they won't be old enough to understand. And even as they grow older, Grace shifter children have trouble controlling their instincts. Biting even affectionately is natural to a wolf. His eyes hold hers unflinching. They will bite you and it will kill you. And then what will it do to them? The image forms in Grace's mind with terrible clarity, her children confused and terrified standing over her lifeless body, not understanding what they've done. The devastation, the trauma, the loss that would shape them forever. No, she whispers, tears filling her eyes. The sound of the cabin door slamming open interrupts the moment. Cooper stands in the doorway, a rifle leveled at EMTT. His face is flushed, his breathing rapid as if he's run all the way here. Put the babies down. Alpha, he orders, his voice steady despite his obvious agitation. Now Emmett's expression hardens, but he makes no move to comply or to defend himself. Grace, Cooper says without taking his eyes off EMTT. Take your children and get behind me. Grace doesn't move, frozen in the impossible space between them. Shifters belong in packs. EMTT says, his eyes on Grace rather than the rifle, especially young ones. Your children need to be amongst their kind. They need an alpha. They need you. Grace finishes softly. EMTT meets her gaze. I'm sorry, Grace, but I will have to take the children with me for your own good. Grace gasps, a hand flying to her mouth. You will be allowed to visit under surveillance. EMTT continues, his tone gentling. But to leave the children in your care, that isn't sustainable for either of you. The sincerity in his voice, the genuine love in his eyes as he looks at the twins, it cuts through Grace's denial. He believes what he's saying. He truly thinks this is the only way. Cooper, Grace says, her voice trembling slightly. Is this true? Cooper's jaw tightens. You're their mother, Grace, is it true? She presses. Cooper's shoulders slump slightly. Yes, he admits reluctantly. But I'll help you. It's not right separating a mother from her children. This isn't about what's right, Emmett begins, his voice rising. This is about survival. What would Thomas have wanted? Grace interrupts, the question cutting through his justifications. EMTT freezes, the certainty draining from his expression. It's no use asking him, Cooper says bitterly. He never cared what Thomas wanted. I'm sure that's not true, Grace says quietly. But EMTT's face has darkened, a growl rumbling deep in his chest. It is true, Cooper insists. The rifle still trained on EMTT. He didn't care. Thomas didn't want to be alpha. He didn't care. Thomas fell in love with you, Grace. And he didn't care that banishing him from the pack was as good as killing him. Enough. EMTT snarls, his face contorted with sudden fury. Grace moves quickly, taking the now stirring twins from EMTT's arms and retreating to place them safely in their room. When she returns, the tension in the main room has escalated. Cooper and EMTT locked in a standoff of words and unspoken history. He was attacked by rogues because he had no protection, because you took away that protection. Cooper is saying, his voice rising with emotion. Enough, boy. EMTT commands, his voice carrying that same resonant quality that had silenced Zoe's cries. What are you talking about? Grace asks, stepping back into the room. Cooper's face is pale with anger. Thomas didn't die during a hiking trip, Grace, or more accurately, he didn't die in an accident. He was killed by other shifters. Shifters that were after our pack, after EMTT. They thought using Thomas to get to him. I said enough, Emmett roars, rising to his feet. If only they knew you'd sooner let your own son die than support him in choices you didn't agree with. Cooper shouts back. Thomas fought the rogues for you. He died because you abandoned him. Something breaks in EMTT's expression. Control, restraint, the careful mask of authority. With a sound that's more animal than human, he lunges toward Cooper. Mid-leap, his form blurs, shifts, transforms, and suddenly the silver wolf is sailing through the air toward Cooper. Cooper raises the rifle, his finger moving to the trigger. No! Grace cries, lunging forward to divert the barrel. The shot goes wild, splintering wood near the ceiling. The wolf EMTT lands heavily, teeth bared in a snarl. Stop! Grace commands, placing herself between them. She turns to Cooper first. I appreciate you fighting for me, she says, meaning every word. But killing EMTT is not what Thomas would have wanted. Her voice softens. And it's not what my children want because they love their grandfather. The realization washes over her as she speaks. The wolf who appeared in the storm, who led them to safety, who watched over them with such devotion, was their grandfather all along. He had shown up when they needed him most, protected them, loved them in his way. Grace was orphaned young, bounced through the foster system. She never knew a parent's love. To have family appear for her children, to see that fierce devotion touches an empty place inside her she hadn't realized still AKT. But mostly she looks at the wolf at EMT and sees her children's future. One day soon they will be the same. Wolves. Her children are wolves and she cannot help them with that. They would have needed their father. But their father is gone. I will be allowed to visit, she asks softly, addressing the wolf. EMTT goes perfectly still. Don't, Grace, Cooper pleads, lowering the rifle. You survived the birth. Most humans don't. Don't sell yourself short. I'm not, Grace says, tears streaming freely down her face now. I will be in their lives. I will be their mother. But I can't help them with... She gestures helplessly, unable to articulate the enormity of what her children will need. She wipes at her tears, then kneels before the wolf, meeting those familiar amber eyes directly. We will raise them together, she says with quiet conviction, as we have these past months as a family. Something shifts in the wolf's gaze, a grudging respect. Slowly, deliberately, the massive silver head inclines in what can only be interpreted as agreement. It is the right choice. The only choice that keeps them safe, that gives them what they need. The choice that Thomas would have made had he lived to see his children. But as Grace looks at the wolf that saved them, at the grandfather who will raise her babies, she feels the weight of all she's losing pressed down like stones on her chest. Family, she whispers, the word catching on a sob as she reaches out a trembling hand to the wolf. Together, the promise feels like both a blessing and farewell. Chapter 8. 2 years later, sunlight filters through ancient pines, dappling the forest clearing with gold. Luca and Zoe, now sturdy toddlers with wild energy and wilder curls, chase each other in circles, their laughter ringing like bells in the crisp mountain air. Grace watches from her bench at the edge of the clearing, hands folded in her lap to keep from reaching out. They're getting faster, Cooper observes, standing at her shoulder like the sentinel he's become. Zoe almost caught that squirrel yesterday. Grace smiles, pride and heartache mingling. She has her father's reflexes. 2 years have etched their patterns into this new life. The Alpha's estate has become home, though not in the way Grace once imagined motherhood would be. She has her own house at the edge of the property, close enough to see her children daily, far enough to keep them safe from accidental harm. Luca spots her and breaks into a delighted run toward the bench. Mama, look. He holds up a pine cone, his greatest treasure. Behind him, EMTT emerges from the trees in wolf form, silver-gray coat gleaming in the sunlight. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Grace calls, not rising from the bench. Luca beams, taking another step toward her. Careful, Cooper murmurs, moving subtly to position himself between Grace and the approaching toddler. EMTT makes a soft sound, not quite a growl, more a reminder, and Luca stops, remembering the rules. His face falls for just a moment, then brightens as EMTT nudges him gently with his massive head. Show your sister, Grace suggests, keeping her voice light despite her aching heart. Maybe you can find one for her too. Grace watches as EMTT helps Luca present the pine cone to Zoe, guiding their interaction with subtle movements and occasional soft huffs. The twins adore him, respond to his guidance with an instinctive understanding that transcends human language. You're doing great, Cooper says quietly, noting her expression. They know you love them. His presence has become her anchor in this strange new world. Officially her liaison to the pack, unofficially her protector against those who view a human in their midst with suspicion. Cooper has become something more than friend, though neither has put a name to it. It's dinner soon, Cooper says, checking his watch. I should get you back before the hunting party returns. Another safety measure, keeping her away when newly shifted wolves might be running on instinct rather than reason. Grace nods. Rising from the bench, she lifts her hand in farewell to the twins, who wave enthusiastically, then blows them kisses that they pretend to catch and press to their cheeks. These small rituals sustain her. The gestures of affection that bridge the physical distance she must maintain, especially now that they have nearly all their teeth. Small but deadly to her human biology. As they walk back toward her cabin, Cooper's steady presence beside her, Grace catches sight of EMTT, watching them go, his wolf eyes following their progress with unreadable intent. Are you happy here, Grace? The question comes during their weekly dinner, a tradition that began 6 months after her arrival at the compound. EMTT, in human form, sits across from her at the heavy oak table in the main house, a glass of wine in his hand. It's a question he asks often, always with the same intensity. I'm grateful, Grace answers as she always does, to be part of their lives, to watch them grow. It's not a direct answer, and they both know it. EMTT studies her over the rim of his glass. Over the past 2 years, a careful respect has grown between them, built on their shared love for the twins and for Thomas's memory. Tell me about the apartment again, Emmett says, shifting the conversation to familiar ground. The one you shared with Thomas. Grace smiles, settling into these memories that have become a comfort to them both. She paints the picture of their life together, and EMTT listens with the same rapt attention he always shows. In return, he shares his own memories, Thomas at 5 already stubborn and fierce, Thomas at 12 shifting for the first time, Thomas at 16 already questioning the rigid hierarchy of the pack. He was never meant to be alpha. EMTT admits, I should have seen that earlier. Cooper enters quietly, bringing coffee and the photo albums that have become part of their ritual. The old man's getting sentimental again. He asks Grace with a wink. She ignores him good-naturally. Thomas looks happy here, she comments, instead touching a photo of teenage Thomas. He was, Emmett confirms, until he wasn't. As Grace prepares to return to her cabin, he walks her to the door, a courtesy he's only recently begun to observe. Cooper will see you safely back, he says. But I'd like to visit you tomorrow evening if that's acceptable. Grace looks at him in surprise. Of course, she says. Is everything all right? Yes, he assures her. There's simply a matter I wish to discuss privately. The knock at her door comes precisely at 7 the next evening. EMTT stands on her porch, his imposing frame silhouetted against the setting sun. Thank you for agreeing to see me, he says formally, declining her offer of a seat. He stops his pacing, turning to face her fully. I want to thank you, Grace, she blinks in surprise. For what? For being a wonderful mother to my grandchildren, he says. Thomas chose well when he chose you. Grace doesn't know how to respond to this unexpected praise. They make it easy to love them, she says finally. EMTT shakes his head. But the situation you've been placed in doesn't. Nothing about this has been easy for you. He hesitates, then asks the familiar question. Are you happy here, Grace? Yes, she says automatically. I'm grateful for number EMTT interrupts gently. The truth, please. Grace meets his amber eyes, so like her children's, and finds she cannot dissemble. I'm as happy as I can be, she says softly, but it breaks my heart a little every day, not being able to hold them when they reach for me. EMTT takes her hand, the gesture so unexpected that Grace nearly pulls away. You've reunited me with my son, he says, emotion making his voice rough. Not literally, of course, but through your stories, your memories, you've given me back the years I lost with him. Grace feels tears pricking at her eyes. He would have wanted that. You've done more for my family, for my son, for my grandchildren than I ever have. EMTT continues, his grip on her hand tightening. You are more of a family leader than I ever was. Despite your fears, your feelings, you do what is best for your family always. Grace squeezes his hand back, confused when she notices movement outside the window. A tall figure with copper-colored hair waiting at a respectful distance. Who is that? She asks, nodding toward the window. EMTT doesn't turn to look. Someone who will help me express my gratitude to you. What do you mean? For 2 years now, I've watched you be here for your children, for us keeping silent on your own pain. EMTT says, I've been a fool, Grace. Your children need you more than anything. Anyone. I am here, Grace says, bewildered by his intensity, and I will always be here. Yes, EMTT says with surprising firmness. You will. His next words stop her breath entirely. How would you like to be fully part of the pack from now on? Not separate, not watching from a distance. Grace stares at him uncomprehending. What do you mean? Isn't it necessary? At least until the twins are older. Ithis lasted long enough. EMTT interrupts. And it will no longer be necessary after tonight. What? Grace whispers, how? EMTT studies her face, his expression more open than she's ever seen it. How would you like to become a shifter? The question is so unexpected that Grace can only stare at him. But it's not possible, she says finally. You said no human has survived the bite in centuries. What if it was? EMTT presses. Would you want it? Grace's mind spins with possibilities. To be a shifter. To be like her children, to understand their world, and to be fully present in their lives, to be able to teach them, guide them, protect them as only a mother can. And beneath these thoughts, unbidden but undeniable, to belong fully to this world that Cooper inhabits, to erase the final barrier between them. Yes, she whispers, the truth of it resonating through her entire being. Yes, I would. EMTT nods once as if he never doubted her answer. Good. He squeezes her hand again. Then it will be done. But Grace glances again at the window at the stranger with his unusual copper hair. As if sensing her attention, he turns and Grace catches a glimpse of eyes glowing an impossible emerald green. This is goodbye, Emmett says, drawing her attention back to him. What? Grace asks, suddenly afraid. What will you do? Make things right, Emmett says simply, no matter the cost. Before she can question him further, he releases her hand and walks out, his stride purposeful, shoulders set with determination. Grace stands frozen, trying to make sense of the encounter when a soft knock sounds at her still open door. Cooper leans against the frame, his expression troubled. You heard? She asks. He nods, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. I was listening. Force of habit, watching out for you. Who was that man with EMTT? The one with the green eyes? Cooper runs a hand through his hair. A gesture of agitation. She's come to recognize a magician. He's something older. Something that can grant wishes. Any wish, but always at a price. A price? Grace echoes, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the evening. What price? Cooper moves closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek with unusual tenderness. Some things are priceless, he says softly, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that makes her breath catch. You are one of them. Grace understands then with terrible clarity what EMTT intends. No, she whispers. He can't, he already has. Cooper says gently. The decision was made before he came to you tonight. Grace feels tears spill over, running down her cheeks and over Cooper's fingers. Why would he make such a dangerous wish for me? Cooper's smile is sad. but knowing because he finally understood what Thomas knew all along, that love is worth any sacrifice. Epilogue. The old man sits on the front porch watching snowflakes drift from a pearl gray sky. Winter again. Is it the first snow of the season? Perhaps the last? He can't quite remember what month it is. December, maybe, or February. Sometimes the days blur together, hours stretching and compressing like an accordion being played by careless hands. Yesterday seems very far away. Tomorrow feels uncertain. There was something important he was supposed to remember. A name, yes, his name. What was it? The thought slips away like water through cupped fingers, leaving only a vague unease behind. He should know his own name. Everyone knows their name. The realization sends a flutter of panic through his chest, his heart beating too quickly beneath the thick sweater, someone who had helped him put on this morning. Movement in the clearing draws his attention away from the frightening blank space where his memory should be. Wolves, 3 of them playing in the fresh snow. The man smiles. He doesn't remember his name, but he remembers them. The 2 smaller ones, pups still, though growing rapidly, tumble over each other, nipping and wrestling. The larger one, their mother, watches from the edge of the trees, her sleek black coat a stark contrast against the white landscape. The old man feels something settle in his chest as he watches them. This at least feels right, familiar. The wolves belong here just as he does. One of the pups, silver gray with amber eyes, gets the upper hand in the wrestling match, pinning his sister and snarling triumphantly. Thomas, the old man calls out without thinking. Don't snarl. That's not how an alpha behaves. Both pups stop their play, turning to look at him with intelligent eyes. The silver one, Thomas, tilts his head as if considering the admonishment. Then both pups bound toward the porch, their paws leaving delicate tracks in the pristine snow. They press against his legs, warm and solid, their fur damp from the snow. The old man reaches down to stroke their heads, his gnarled fingers moving with muscle memory he doesn't question. This feels right, too, the weight of their heads beneath his palms. The trust in their eyes as they look up at him. The mother wolf approaches more slowly, her dark form graceful against the white backdrop. She stops at the bottom of the porch steps, watching with eyes that seem to hold questions the old man can't quite decipher. Beautiful day, he tells her, and she makes a soft sound in response. Later, he sits in a worn armchair by the fire. The cabin is warm and smells of pine and cinnamon. The wolves are gone, but there are people now. A woman with eyes like midnight and 2 children who seem vaguely familiar. Can I read you a story, Grandpa? The little girl asks, holding up a carefully folded piece of paper covered in large, uneven handwriting. I wrote it. He doesn't know who this girl's grandpa is, but the hopeful light in her eyes makes him nod. I'd love to hear it, he says. She beams and begins to read, her voice high and sweet. Once upon a time, there was a princess who became friends with a wolf. Except it wasn't really a wolf, but aching in disguise. The old man listens, something stirring in the back of his mind like a half-forgotten dream. And in the end, the little girl concludes proudly, she was so brave that the king named her his heir, and she married his son, the prince. The old man looks at the woman sitting nearby, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Something about her seems important, meaningful. She would make a fine queen, he thinks suddenly. Thomas would like her. He smiles and squeezes her hand, though he's not entirely sure why tears have formed in her eyes, or why she returns the pressure with such fierce tenderness. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you have any ideas or suggestions for future stories, feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to get inspiration from you. If you enjoyed listening to this story, please hit the like button, share it with someone who'd love this, and subscribe to Nightbond Narratives, and ring the bell, so you don't miss what's coming next. Tell me in the comments below which part of the world you are watching from. Also, tell me which part of the story you like the most. Compilation of a video of an audiobook takes a lot of time and effort, so if you see any ambiguity, please ignore it. I hope you will appreciate my effort.